The email arrived at 7:42 on a Monday morning. Marcus Johnson, sitting at his desk on the 37th floor of the Apex Energy Tower in downtown Chicago, saw the notification pop up on his screen. Sender, David Rothman, Chief Executive Officer. Subject line, VP Promotion, Confidential. Marcus's heart stopped, then started again, faster, much faster. He'd been waiting for this email for 3 years. 3 long years of 80-hour weeks, of sacrificed weekends, of missing his daughter's recitals and his son's basketball games, of prioritizing career over everything else. Vice President of Operations. The position he'd been working towards since joining Apex Energy 6 years ago. The position that would change everything. Salary jumping from $130,000 to $280,000. Stock options, executive benefits, corner office, real power, real influence. And finally, proof. Proof that a black man from the South Side could make it, could climb the ladder, could succeed in corporate America despite the obstacles, despite the microaggressions, despite having to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Marcus, his hand trembling slightly, clicked the email open. Marcus, congratulations. The executive board has selected you as our next Vice President of Operations, effective immediately. Official announcement will be made Friday at the board meeting. Please keep this confidential until then. We need to discuss transition details. My office, 9 a.m. today. This is well-deserved. You've earned it. David Rothman, CEO. Marcus sat back in his chair, stared at the screen, read it again and again, making sure it was real, that he wasn't imagining it. VP of Operations. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Marcus, unable to contain himself, whispered, "Yes, yes." He wanted to shout, to call his wife Keisha, to call his parents, to tell everyone. But the email said confidential. Until Friday. 4 more days. He could wait 4 days. Marcus, standing up, pacing his office, feeling energy coursing through his body, says to himself, VP, Vice President Marcus Johnson. Man, that sounds good. His phone buzzed. Text message from Keisha. Morning, baby. Don't forget Jamal's game tonight, 6 p.m. You promised you'd be there. He's counting on you. Marcus looked at the text, felt slight guilt. He'd missed the last 3 games. Work. Always work. But tonight he'd make it. Absolutely. He could celebrate the promotion and be there for his son. He texted back, I'll be there. Promise. Love you. Another buzz, this time from his assistant, Monica. Marcus, you have a 9 a.m. with Rothman. Just confirming you're aware. Marcus texted back. Confirmed. I'll be ready. He looked at the clock. 7:48. He had over an hour. Enough time to prepare, to look over the operations reports, to be ready for whatever transition details Rothman wanted to discuss. Marcus opened his laptop, pulled up the quarterly reports, and started reading. But his mind kept drifting. To the salary, to the title, to what this meant. Not just for him, but for his family, for his kids, for his parents who'd scraped and saved to put him through engineering school at Northwestern, for his community. He'd made it. Against all odds, he'd made it. My name is Marcus Johnson. I'm 35 years old, born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Englewood neighborhood. Not the good part, the part where you hear gunshots at night, where half your friends end up dead or in prison by 25, where opportunities are rare and obstacles are everywhere. But I got out, through education, through hard work, through determination. My parents, Lawrence and Diane Johnson, both worked multiple jobs. Dad was a mechanic. Mom was a nurse's aide. They pushed me hard. School first, always. No excuses. I was good at math, at science, at figuring out how things worked. Got a scholarship to Northwestern, studied environmental engineering, graduated top of my class. Met Keisha there, junior year. She was studying education. Beautiful, smart, driven. We got married right after graduation, 22 years old. Young, but sure. We have 2 kids now, Jamal, 12, Destiny, 9. Good kids, smart. Growing up in a completely different world than I did. Suburb, good schools, safe streets, everything I didn't have. And that's because of this job, Apex Energy. Started 6 years ago as a project engineer. Worked my way up, senior engineer, then engineering manager, then director of engineering operations, and now VP. It's been hard, really hard. The corporate world isn't designed for people who look like me. There are only 3 black executives at Apex out of 42, and I'm about to be the highest ranking. That matters, not just to me, but to every black kid who needs to see that it's possible, that you can come from nothing and become something. This promotion, it's not just a job, it's proof, it's legacy, it's everything. At 8:55, Marcus, wearing his best navy suit, crisp white shirt, and burgundy tie, took the elevator to the 42nd floor, executive level, where he'd soon have his own office. He walked past the reception area, past the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, past offices of senior executives he'd only interacted with in meetings, and arrived at the CEO's suite. Rothman's assistant, Elizabeth, an older white woman with perfectly styled gray hair, looked up, smiled warmly, says, "Marcus, congratulations. He's expecting you. Go right in." Marcus, nodding, smiling, says, "Thank you, Elizabeth." He knocked twice on the large oak door. A voice from inside, "Come in." Marcus opened the door, stepped into the massive corner office. David Rothman, 63 years old, white, silver hair, expensive suit, sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Marcus's first car. Rothman, standing, extending his hand, genuinely smiling, says, "Marcus, come in, sit down." They shook hands, firm, professional. Marcus sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Rothman, sitting back down, clasping his hands together, says, "So, VP of Operations, how does it feel?" Marcus, trying to stay professional but unable to hide his excitement, says, "Honestly, it feels incredible. This has been my goal since I started here. I'm ready. I won't let you down." Rothman, nodding approvingly, says, "I know you won't. That's why we chose you. You've consistently delivered results. The Louisiana refinery project? Ahead of schedule, under budget. The efficiency improvements in our Midwest facilities? Increased output by 12% while reducing costs by 8%. You're exactly what this company needs at the VP level." Marcus, feeling validated, says, "Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity." Rothman, leaning forward, his tone shifting slightly more serious, says, "Now, there are some things we need to discuss. Transition items, expectations, priorities." Marcus, pulling out his tablet, ready to take notes, says, "I'm listening." Rothman, standing, walking to the window, looking out at the city, says, "As VP of Operations, you'll oversee all our production facilities, 12 sites, 5 states. That includes the new Louisiana plant, our biggest investment in a decade, $300 million, critical to our growth strategy." Marcus, nodding, says, "I'm familiar with the Louisiana plant. I consulted on the environmental impact assessment during planning." Rothman, still looking out the window, says, "Good, then you know how important it is. We're projecting it'll increase our production capacity by 25%. That means significant revenue growth, shareholder value, stock price appreciation." Marcus, sensing something beneath the surface, says, "Is there a concern with the Louisiana plant?" Rothman, turning back, leaning against the window, says, "Not a concern, just a situation. That needs to be managed, carefully." Marcus, his instincts tingling, says, "What kind of situation?" Rothman, walking back to his desk, pulling out a folder marked Confidential, sliding it across to Marcus, says, "There have been some complaints from the local community near the plant about water quality. They're claiming our discharge is contaminating the groundwater, causing health issues." Marcus, opening the folder, seeing reports, test results, letters from residents, says, "Are the claims valid?" Rothman, pausing just a fraction too long, says, "Our official testing shows we're within EPA guidelines. Barely, but within." Marcus, looking up, says, "Barely?" Rothman, sitting down, his tone becoming more corporate, more calculated, says, "Marcus, let me be frank. The plant is technically compliant. We're not breaking any laws, but the discharge levels are higher than ideal. And yes, there's a possibility, small possibility, that it could be affecting the local water supply." Marcus, feeling his stomach tighten, says, "What kind of effects?" Rothman, waving his hand dismissively, says, "Minor, skin irritations, stomach issues, nothing catastrophic. And again, it's not definitively linked to our plant. Could be other factors, old pipes, agricultural runoff, lots of variables." Marcus, looking through the reports, seeing elevated levels of benzene, toluene, other chemicals, says, "These levels aren't minor. Benzene is carcinogenic. Long-term exposure can cause serious problems, cancer, blood disorders." Rothman, his tone hardening slightly, says, "Which is why we're within EPA limits. The government sets those limits specifically to prevent harm. We're following the law." Marcus, looking at a letter from a community group, reading, "Our children are getting sick. The water smells like chemicals. We're scared," says, "Who are these people? What community is this affecting?" Rothman, uncomfortable now, says, "It's a small town. Bayou Ridge, population about 1,500, predominantly black, low income, fishing community. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Predominantly black, low income. The kind of community that doesn't have resources, doesn't have lawyers, doesn't have political power. The kind of community that gets ignored. Marcus carefully says, "What do they want?" Rothman, sighing, says, "They want us to install additional filtration systems, upgrade the discharge treatment, which would cost approximately $47 million, and delay our production ramp-up by 6 to 8 months, which would impact our revenue projections, which would tank our stock price, which would cost the company, conservatively, $200 million in market value." Marcus sat back, understanding now why this conversation was happening, why this was a situation to be managed. Rothman, leaning forward, his voice becoming more personal, more persuasive, says, "Marcus, I chose you for this position because you're smart, strategic, a problem solver, and this is a problem that needs solving, not with expensive upgrades that aren't legally required, but with community relations, outreach, PR." Marcus, slowly, says, "You want me to convince them to drop their complaints." Rothman, not denying it, says, "I want you to manage the situation, show them we're partners, that we care, offer some community investment, new playground, scholarship fund, something visible, something that makes them feel heard. And in return, they stop the noise, stop talking to the EPA, stop organizing." Marcus, feeling the trap closing, says, "And if I don't? If I recommend the upgrades?" Rothman's expression changed. The warmth disappeared, replaced by cold corporate reality. Rothman, bluntly, says, "Then the board will question whether you're ready for executive leadership, whether you understand how business works, whether you can make tough decisions that prioritize shareholder value over emotional responses." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Rothman, softer now, almost fatherly, says, "Marcus, I like you. I respect you. You've earned this promotion. But at this level, it's about more than engineering. It's about understanding that perfect isn't possible, that sometimes you have to make decisions that aren't ideal, but are necessary. That's leadership." He slid another document across the desk. An offer letter. Official. Detailing salary, benefits, stock options. Rothman, tapping the paper, says $280,000 base salary, $150,000 annual bonus potential, stock options valued at roughly $300,000 over 4 years, benefits package worth another $50,000. You're looking at over $700,000 in total compensation over the next 4 years, not including future raises. Marcus stared at the numbers. $700,000. Life-changing money. Generational wealth. Everything his parents never had. Everything his kids would need. Rothman, standing, extending his hand, says, "So, do we have an understanding? Can you manage the Louisiana situation? Keep it quiet? Keep production on track?" Marcus looked at the hand, at the offer letter, at the folder with reports about contaminated water and sick children, predominantly black, low income, Bayou Ridge. His hand moved toward Rothman's, almost automatically. Years of corporate conditioning, of knowing when to say yes, of understanding how the game is played. But before his hand could complete the shake, before he could say yes, before he could sell his soul for $700,000, something happened. The office around Marcus began to change. Sound became muffled, distant, like listening through water. The fluorescent lights above started to slow their imperceptible flicker, slowing, until Marcus could see each individual pulse of light. Rothman's hand, extended across the desk, stopped moving, frozen mid-reach, his expression locked, waiting, expectant. Marcus, still in his chair, still able to move, looked around in confusion, says, What's happening?" The air itself seemed to thicken, to hold. Time wasn't flowing, it was stopped. Marcus stood up, slowly, walked around the desk. Rothman didn't move, didn't blink, completely frozen. Marcus, his heart pounding, says, "This isn't real. This can't be real." And then, a voice. Not external, not audible, but somehow present, deep within his mind, his soul. "You're at a crossroads." Marcus, spinning around, seeing no one, says, "Who's there? Who's talking?" You know what's right, and you know what's profitable, and you're being asked to choose. Marcus, defensive, says, I'm just doing my job, climbing the ladder, providing for my family. There's nothing wrong with that. Is there nothing wrong? Or is there everything wrong? Marcus, frustrated, confused, says, I don't understand. What do you want from me? Come, see something. And before Marcus could protest, could resist, the office dissolved around him. Marcus blinked. The office was gone. He was standing somewhere else entirely. Heat. Dry, intense heat. Sun beating down from cloudless sky. Dust. Sand. Rocky terrain. He looked around. A road. Ancient. Dirt path. People walking. Wearing robes. Tunics. Sandals. Speaking Aramaic. Hebrew. Languages he shouldn't understand, but somehow did. This was Israel. Ancient Israel. Judea. 1st century. Marcus, invisible to those around him, observed. A group of people walked along the road, and in the center of the group, a man. Teaching. Speaking. People gathered around him, listening intently. Marcus moved closer and recognized him immediately, even though he'd never seen him before. Not like this. Jesus. He was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 33, simple robe, dusty from travel, sandals worn, face weathered by sun and wind. But his eyes were different, deep, compassionate, seeing everything. He was teaching as he walked, about God, about the kingdom, about love. The people around him hung on every word. And then, someone approached, running, urgently, a young man, rich, obviously rich, expensive robes, fine fabric, gold jewelry, well-fed, well-groomed, maybe 25 years old, wealthy family, privileged background. The young man, out of breath from running, kneeled in front of Jesus right there in the road, says, Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? The crowd stopped, watched. This was unusual. Rich people didn't usually kneel, didn't usually ask religious questions publicly, didn't usually care about eternal life when earthly life was so comfortable. Jesus, looking at him with those penetrating eyes, says, Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. The young man, earnest, genuine, says, I want to know. Please, what must I do? Jesus, his voice gentle but clear, says, You know the commandments. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not defraud. Honor your father and mother. The young man, nodding vigorously, excited, says, Teacher, all these I have kept from my youth. I've followed all of them, every one, since I was a child. And Marcus could see it was true. The young man wasn't lying, wasn't boasting. He genuinely had kept the commandments. He was morally upright, ethically sound, religiously observant, a good person. By every measurable standard, a good person. Jesus looked at him, and Marcus saw something in Jesus' face, something unexpected. Love. The scripture Marcus vaguely remembered said, Jesus looked at him and loved him. And Marcus saw it, real, genuine love. Not judgment, not condemnation, love. Jesus, with compassion in his voice, says, You lack one thing. Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. Silence. Complete silence. The young man's face changed, from eager to confused to shocked to devastated. Sell everything? Give it to the poor? Everything. The young man, his voice shaking, says, Everything? All of it? Jesus, not backing down, not softening, says, Yes, all of it. Your wealth is separating you from God. It's become your master, and you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and money. Choose. The young man stood there, frozen, face twisted in anguish. This was the one thing he couldn't do, the one sacrifice he couldn't make. He looked at Jesus, then at his expensive robes, then back at Jesus, then at the ground. And Marcus knew before it happened, what the young man would choose. Slowly, with shoulders slumping, with face falling, the young man turned and walked away, dejected, grieving, but walking away, choosing wealth, over Jesus, over eternal life, over everything. The disciples stood there, shocked, confused. One of them, Peter, says, Master, he was rich. He could have funded our ministry, supported us. Why did you ask him to give it away? Jesus, watching the young man disappear down the road, his voice sad, says, How difficult it is for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God. The disciples, even more confused, says, Then who can be saved? If even rich people who keep all the commandments can't make it, how can anyone? Jesus, turning to them, says, "With man it is impossible, but not with God. With God, all things are possible." And then he added something that made Marcus's blood run cold. Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." A camel, through the eye of a needle. Impossible. That was the point. Impossible. Not because God rejected rich people, but because rich people couldn't let go of wealth. It became their security, their identity, their God. And you cannot serve two gods. The scene began to fade. The road, the disciples, Jesus, all dissolving into light. But Marcus saw one more thing. Jesus' face. As he watched the young man walk away, it wasn't angry, it wasn't judgmental. It was sad, deeply sad, because he loved that young man and wanted him to be free. But the young man chose his chains, chose wealth over freedom, money over meaning, possessions over purpose. And Jesus let him go. Didn't force him, didn't chase him, just let him go. With sadness, with love, with grief over what could have been. The voice returned. "You saw." Marcus, his voice barely a whisper, says, "I saw." "What did you see?" Marcus, struggling to process, says, "I saw a man, a good man, who followed all the rules, who kept the commandments, who was moral, upright, everything you're supposed to be. And Jesus asked him to give up wealth, to give everything to the poor, to follow him. And the man couldn't. He walked away." Why couldn't he? Marcus, feeling the question pierce him, says, "Because his wealth was too important. He loved it more than God, more than eternal life, more than everything." And you? Marcus felt tears building, says, "What about me? What do you love more, God or wealth?" Marcus, defensively, says, "I'm not like him. I'm not rich. I grew up poor. I've worked for everything I have. This promotion, I earned it." Did you? Or were you given opportunities others weren't? Education, health, intelligence, and now success. Are these not gifts? Marcus, angry now, says, "Yes, but I still had to work. I still sacrificed. I still earned this." And what are you being asked to sacrifice now? To earn this promotion? Marcus stopped, the question hanging in the air. What was he being asked to sacrifice? His integrity, his conscience, his responsibility to people who looked like him. Black people, poor people, people living in Bayou Ridge, being poisoned, while he looked the other way.
For what? For $280,000. For stock options. For a title. For wealth.
The young man in the story? He kept all the commandments. He was good, moral. But Jesus asked him to do one more thing. Let go of wealth. Trust God more than money. And he couldn't. You're being asked the same question. What will you choose? Wealth and promotion, or integrity and sacrifice? Marcus, tears flowing now, says, "But it's not the same. That was everything, all his wealth. I'm just being asked to stay quiet about one issue. It's not the same." Isn't it? You're being asked to ignore poisoned water, sick children, suffering families, people who look like you, who have the same history as you, same struggles, and you're being paid to look away. How is that different? Marcus, his voice breaking, says, "Because I have a family, kids, responsibilities. That $280,000, that's my kids' college, that's security, that's everything I never had. How can I throw that away?" The young man had responsibilities too. Wealth meant security, power, influence, ability to help his family, protect them, provide. And Jesus still asked him to let it go, to trust God, to prioritize people over profit. What do you trust? God's provision or corporate salary? Marcus closed his eyes and saw faces. His daughter, Destiny, his son, Jamal, his wife, Keisha, his parents, all depending on him, all trusting him to provide. But then, he saw other faces, faces he'd never met, but could imagine. Children in Bayou Ridge, drinking contaminated water, getting sick, while Apex Energy made profits, while he climbed the ladder, while he said nothing. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and money. Eventually, you must choose. The young man chose wealth. What will you choose? Marcus, sobbing now, says, I don't know. I don't know what to do. If I expose this, I lose everything. The promotion, maybe my job, my salary, my security, everything I've worked for. But if I don't, people suffer, and I become exactly what I swore I'd never be, a sellout, someone who forgets where he came from. Jesus said, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? You're being offered the world, VP, wealth, success, but at what cost? Your soul? Your integrity? Your identity? Marcus, his voice raw, says, so what? I'm supposed to throw away my career? Destroy my family's security? For principle? For people I don't even know? No, you're supposed to trust that God's provision is greater than human wealth, that doing right is better than living comfortable, that your soul is worth more than any salary. The young man walked away sad because he had great possessions. Will you walk away sad, or will you walk toward freedom? Marcus stood there in the frozen moment between two choices, two paths, two versions of himself. One path led to wealth, success, comfort, but required silence, required complicity, required selling his soul. The other path led to, he didn't know, uncertainty, risk, possible ruin, but kept his soul, kept his integrity, kept his humanity. Marcus, looking up, speaking to the voice, to God, to whoever was listening, says, if I do this, if I choose integrity over wealth, will you take care of my family? Will you provide? I always have, haven't I? Marcus thought about his life, growing up poor, but never starving, working hard, but getting opportunities, scholarships, jobs, promotions, meeting Keisha, having kids, having everything that mattered. Had he earned it all? Or had he been given more than he realized? Marcus, with new clarity, says, yes, you have. Always. Then trust me. More than you trust Apex Energy, more than you trust David Rothman, more than you trust wealth. Trust me. Marcus, taking a deep breath, feeling peace for the first time since entering Rothman's office, says, okay, I trust you. I'll do what's right, whatever the cost. The office snapped back, sound rushing in, light normal, time flowing. Rothman's hand still extended, waiting for Marcus to shake, waiting for agreement. Marcus looked at the clock on the wall, 9:11 a.m. When he'd looked before entering the freeze, 9:11 a.m. 7 seconds ago. 7 seconds. A lifetime of revelation in 7 seconds. Marcus, pulling his hand back before it could touch Rothman's, standing up, says, I can't do that. Rothman, confused, hand still extended awkwardly, says, can't do what? Marcus, picking up the folder, the reports, the letters from Bayou Ridge residents, says, I can't manage this situation the way you're asking. These people are being poisoned, slowly, and we know it. And we're choosing profit over their health. I can't be part of that. Rothman, lowering his hand, his expression hardening, says, Marcus, sit down. Let's talk about this. Marcus, remaining standing, says, there's nothing to talk about. Those benzene levels, they're high. Legal, maybe, but dangerous. Long-term exposure will cause cancer, blood diseases, especially in children. And that community is 93% black, low income. They're being targeted because they don't have power, and I won't be complicit in that. Rothman, his voice cold now, says, complicit? We're following EPA regulations. We're not breaking any laws. Marcus, his voice stronger, more certain, says, legal isn't the same as right. You know that, I know that. And asking me to use my face, my race, to convince those people to accept poison, that's using me. That's asking me to betray my own community, and I won't do it. Rothman, standing, voice rising, says, your own community? Marcus, your community is Apex Energy. The people who pay you, who promoted you, who gave you opportunities, that's your community. Marcus, meeting his eyes, says, no. My community is people who look like me, who struggle like I struggled, who deserve clean water, safe environments, justice. And if I have to choose between them and this promotion, I choose them. Rothman, shaking his head, almost pitying, says, you're making a huge mistake. You're throwing away your career. For what? For people you don't even know? Who won't even know you stood up for them? Marcus, picking up his things, heading for the door, says, God will know. And that's enough. He walked out, not looking back, not waiting for response, just walking. Elizabeth, the assistant, looked up, surprised, says, Marcus, are you? Marcus, not stopping, says, "I'm fine. Thank you, Elizabeth." He took the elevator down. Down from the 42nd floor. Down from executive offices. Down from the almost VP office. Down to the 37th floor, where his current office was. And as the elevator descended, Marcus felt something unexpected. Not regret, not fear, not panic. Peace. Deep, overwhelming peace. He'd just walked away from $700,000, from everything he'd worked for, from the pinnacle of his career, and he felt free. Marcus, sitting at his desk, opened his laptop, began typing. An email to the EPA, detailed, including all the reports from the folder, the test results, the community complaints, the elevated chemical levels, the health issues in Bayou Ridge. Everything. He sent everything. Then he opened a new email to David Rothman. Subject, declining VP promotion. David, after our conversation this morning, I must respectfully decline the VP promotion. I cannot in good conscience manage the Louisiana situation as discussed. The community's concerns are valid. The chemical levels, while technically legal, pose serious long-term health risks. I've forwarded all documentation to the EPA for independent investigation. I understand this decision ends my career at Apex Energy. I'm prepared to resign, effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunities I've had here, but I cannot compromise my integrity. Respectfully, Marcus Johnson. He sent it, and immediately his phone rang. Rothman. Marcus declined the call. Seconds later, his office door burst open. Building security. 2 guards. The older guard, professional but firm, says, "Mr. Johnson, we need you to gather your personal items and come with us." Immediately. Marcus, standing, not surprised, says, "Understood." He packed quickly. Photos of Keisha and the kids, his Northwestern diploma, a few books, his coffee mug that said, "Best Dad." The guards escorted him out, through the office, past colleagues who stared, whispered, through the lobby, out the front door, onto the street. Marcus Johnson, no longer employed, no longer climbing, no longer VP-elect, just Marcus, standing on a Chicago sidewalk at 10:32 a.m. on a Monday morning, unemployed. He pulled out his phone, called Keisha. She answered on the second ring. Keisha, cheerful, says, "Hey baby, calling early, what's up?" Marcus, taking a breath, says, "I need to tell you something. Can you sit down?" Keisha, concern immediate in her voice, says, "What happened? Are you okay?" Marcus, honestly, says, "I just got fired. Well, I resigned, but basically fired. I'm out of Apex." Keisha, shocked silence, then says, "What? Why? Marcus, what happened?" Marcus, sitting down on a bench outside the building, says, "They wanted me to cover up pollution. Chemical contamination affecting a black community in Louisiana. People getting sick. Kids. And they wanted me to convince them it was fine. To take money to stay quiet. And I couldn't do it. So I sent everything to the EPA and resigned." Silence. Long silence. Marcus, worried now, says, "Keisha, you there?" Keisha, her voice emotional but strong, says, "I'm here. I'm just processing." "You walked away from the promotion? The VP position?" Marcus says, "Yeah, I did." More silence. Then, Keisha, with pride in her voice, says, "Good. I'm proud of you." Marcus, surprised, says, "You're proud? I just lost $700,000. I'm unemployed. We have a mortgage, kids, bills." Keisha, firmly, says, "And we'll figure it out, like we always do. But you did the right thing. You stood up. You didn't sell out. And that's worth more than any salary. Our kids need to see that, need to know their dad is a man of integrity. That's the legacy that matters." Marcus, tears coming again, says, "I love you so much." Keisha says, "I love you too. Now come home. We'll figure out next steps. Together." Marcus, standing, walking toward the parking garage, says, "I will. But first, I'm going to Jamal's game. 6 p.m. I promised, and I'm keeping that promise." Keisha, laughing through her own tears, says, "Good. He'll be so happy. We'll talk tonight. It'll be okay. God's got this." Marcus, believing it for the first time, says, "Yeah, he does." 3 weeks after walking out of Apex Energy, Marcus, sitting at his kitchen table at 7:15 a.m., opened his laptop and checked emails.
Unemployment had been approved, enough to cover bills for a few months. He'd been applying for jobs, engineering positions, project management, consulting. But word had spread. EPA whistleblower, problematic, not a team player. No one was calling back. His savings were dwindling. The mortgage was due. The kids needed new shoes. Keisha was working extra hours at her teaching job. Things were tight, really tight. Marcus, rubbing his face, exhausted, frustrated, says to himself, God, I did what you asked. I chose integrity. So, where's the provision? His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus says, hello? A woman's voice, professional, says, is this Marcus Johnson, former director of operations at Apex Energy? Marcus, cautious, says, yes, who's asking? The woman says, my name is Dr. Patricia Morrison. I'm the director of the Environmental Justice Alliance. We're a nonprofit working on industrial pollution in low-income communities. I received your name from someone at the EPA. They said you blew the whistle on Apex's Louisiana facility, that you sacrificed your career to expose contamination affecting a Black community. Marcus, sitting up straighter, says, yes, that's correct. Dr. Morrison says, I'd like to meet with you. We're looking for someone with corporate experience, engineering expertise, and most importantly, integrity. Someone who understands both the technical side and the justice side. We can't pay what Apex did, nowhere close. But we can offer you a position, Environmental Justice Engineer. Salary, $95,000. Benefits, and the opportunity to actually protect communities instead of corporations. Marcus, stunned, says, are you serious? Dr. Morrison, laughing, says, completely serious. Can you come to our office tomorrow, 10 a.m.? We're on the south side, near Bronzeville. Marcus says, the south side? That's where I grew up. Dr. Morrison says, I know. We did our research. That's partly why we want you. You know these communities. You came from them. You understand. So, can you come? Marcus, without hesitation, says, yes, absolutely. I'll be there. He hung up, sat there, staring at his phone. $95,000. That was 70% less than the VP position would have paid. Enormous pay cut. But it was enough. Enough for the mortgage, enough for the bills, enough to live. And more importantly, it was purpose. Real purpose. Protecting communities, fighting for justice, using his skills for good. Marcus, looking up, says, thank you. I'm sorry I doubted. 6 months after walking away from Apex Energy, Marcus, wearing jeans and a polo shirt with the Environmental Justice Alliance logo, stood in front of a community center in Bayou Ridge, Louisiana. He'd been working on the case. The EPA investigation had confirmed elevated contamination, forced Apex to install the filtration systems. $47 million, just like Rothman said. And Apex had paid, reluctantly, angrily, but legally required. The community's water was being cleaned, health monitoring implemented, reparations paid. Marcus had been the lead technical consultant, working with the EPA, with community organizers, with lawyers, making sure it was done right. And today the community was celebrating. A town hall, thanking everyone involved, including Marcus. Inside the center, about 200 people filled the room. Families, children, elderly residents, all Black, all living here for generations, all affected. A woman, 78 years old, Mrs. Delacroix, stood at the microphone, says, and we want to thank Mr. Marcus Johnson, who worked for that company, and could have stayed silent, could have kept his job, his money, but instead, he spoke up, sent the reports, exposed the truth, and lost everything for us, people he'd never met. She looked directly at Marcus, sitting in the front row, says, Mr. Johnson, would you come up here, please? Marcus, uncomfortable with attention, stood, walked to the front. Mrs. Delacroix, hugging him tightly, says, thank you. My grandchildren were getting sick, rashes, nosebleeds. The water was poison, and you saved them. You saved us all. The room erupted in applause, standing ovation. Marcus, overwhelmed, tears streaming, just stood there. A young girl, maybe 9 years old, walked up, handed him a drawing. It was a picture of Marcus, labeled, My Hero, in crayon. Marcus, kneeling down to her level, says, thank you. What's your name?
The girl, shyly, says, Imani. Marcus says, that's a beautiful name. It means faith. Imani, smiling, says, my mama says you had faith. That's why you helped us. Marcus, hugging her, says, your mama's right. I did. And I'm so glad you're safe now. After the event, Marcus, walking back to his rental car, felt his phone buzz. Text from Keisha. How'd it go? Marcus texted back. Incredible. Worth everything. I'll tell you tonight. Love you. He got in the car, started driving back to New Orleans to catch his flight home. And as he drove, past bayous, past poor communities, past people who looked like him, he realized something. He'd made the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the profitable choice, but the right choice. And that $95,000 salary? It was enough, more than enough, because he'd kept his soul. 1 year later, 1 year after walking out of Apex Energy, Marcus, now wearing a suit again, but a different kind, stood on a stage at Northwestern University, his alma mater, guest speaker for the graduating environmental engineering class. He looked out at the students, young, hopeful, about to enter the workforce, about to face their own choices. Marcus, standing at the podium, says, 12 months ago, I was offered my dream job, Vice President of Operations, Fortune 500 company, $700,000 compensation package, everything I'd worked for since graduating from this very university. The students leaned in, interested. And I turned it down. I walked away. Because to get that job, to keep that promotion, I would have had to stay silent about corporate pollution, about contaminated water, about sick children, predominantly black children, in a poor Louisiana town. He paused. Let it sink in. I want you to understand something. The choice wasn't easy. I have a family, a mortgage, responsibilities. Walking away meant financial uncertainty, career risk, possible ruin. But staying meant selling my soul, betraying my community, becoming the kind of person I swore I'd never be. And I remembered a story about a rich young man who had everything, who was good, moral, upright. And Jesus asked him to give up his wealth, to follow him, to prioritize people over profit. And the man couldn't. He walked away sad, because he loved his possessions more than he loved God. The room was silent, students absorbing every word. I didn't want to be that man. I didn't want to walk away sad, clutching my wealth, having gained the world but lost my soul. So I chose differently. And yes, it cost me, but it also freed me. I now work for the Environmental Justice Alliance, making $95,000 a year instead of $280. But I sleep at night. I look my kids in the eye. I know who I am. He smiled. And here's what I learned. God provides. Not always the way you expect, not always the amount you want, but always enough. My family is fine. Fed, housed, happy. We drive older cars, take fewer vacations, live more simply, and we're closer than ever. Because when you choose integrity over wealth, when you choose people over profit, when you choose God over greed, you discover what actually matters. And it's not money. It's meaning, purpose, soul. He looked directly at the graduates. You're about to enter industries that will offer you money, promotions, success. And sometimes those opportunities will require compromise, silence, complicity. And you'll have to choose. Will you be the rich young ruler who walks away sad, clutching possessions? Or will you be someone who lets go, who trusts God, who prioritizes people? It's the hardest choice you'll ever make, but it's also the most important. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose your soul over your salary, every time. The auditorium erupted in applause, students standing, cheering. And Marcus stood there, no longer a corporate VP, but something better, something real, something whole, a man who'd kept his soul. The truth about greed is this. It's not about how much you have. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice to get more. The rich young ruler wasn't evil. He was good, moral, upright. But when Jesus asked him to give up wealth, he couldn't, because his possessions possessed him. Marcus Johnson wasn't greedy. He'd worked hard, earned his success, deserved the promotion. But when that promotion required compromising his integrity, poisoning his community, betraying his values, he had to choose wealth or soul, money or meaning, promotion or principle. And he chose principle, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Did it cost him? Yes, enormously. Financially, professionally, socially. Did God provide? Yes. Not abundantly, not luxuriously, but sufficiently. Enough for needs, enough for family, enough for purpose. And that's the lesson. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and money. Eventually, you must choose. Will you be like the rich young ruler, walking away sad, clutching possessions, having gained wealth but lost soul? Or will you be like Marcus, walking away free, releasing possessions, having lost wealth but kept soul? The choice, as always, is yours. But remember Jesus' words. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? Nothing. It profits nothing. Because your soul is worth more than any salary. Your integrity is worth more than any promotion. Your identity is worth more than any title. Marcus learned that in 7 seconds, in a freeze, in a moment when God asked, "What do you love more, me or money?" And he chose God, and lost everything, and gained everything that mattered. 3 years later, Marcus received a letter from Apex Energy's legal department. The company had been fined $230 million for environmental violations. Multiple facilities, multiple states. The whistleblower program awarded Marcus $8 million. 18% of the fine recovered. $8 million. More than he would have made as VP over an entire career. Marcus, sitting at his kitchen table, looking at the check, showed Keisha. She stared, speechless, finally says, "8 million?" Marcus, laughing, crying, says, "God provides. Not always when we expect, not always how we expect, but always." They donated half to environmental justice organizations, to Bayou Ridge Community, to scholarships for Black engineering students. Kept half, paid off their house, set up college funds, invested wisely. And Marcus kept his job at the Environmental Justice Alliance, still making $95,000, still fighting for communities, still choosing meaning over money. Because the money didn't change him, the choice did. The moment he walked away from greed, toward God, that's what changed him. And he never regretted it, not once, not ever. This was Marcus's story, but it's also yours, because we all face these moments, when success requires compromise, when promotion requires silence, when wealth requires selling something you can't get back, your integrity, your values, your soul. And we have a choice. Do we chase the money? Do we climb the ladder? Do we gain the world? Or do we remember that Jesus asked a rich young man to give it all up, not because wealth is evil, but because it had become his God, his security, his identity. And the man couldn't. He walked away sad, having everything, but missing the one thing, freedom. Marcus chose differently, walked away from wealth, toward integrity, toward purpose, toward God, and lost everything that didn't matter, and gained everything that did. Can you do the same? When your promotion requires compromise, when your success requires silence, when your wealth requires selling your soul, can you walk away? Can you trust God? Can you choose principle over profit? It's the hardest choice, but it's also the most freeing. Because at the end of your life, you won't remember your salary. You'll remember your choices, who you were, what you stood for, whether you kept your soul. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose your soul. Every time. Have you ever faced the choice between money and integrity? Between success and principle? Share your story in the comments below. And if you want to go deeper, download the free ebook, The Cost of Compromise, Choosing Integrity Over Income. Link in the description. This ebook includes complete study of the rich young ruler passage, why Jesus asked him to give up everything, modern applications of greed and wealth, how to discern when success requires compromise, practical guide to financial integrity, discussion questions for small groups, real stories of people who chose principle over profit, how to trust God's provision over corporate salary. Next week, Episode 3, Addiction, One More Time, where Jake Morrison, a firefighter veteran, faces his opioid demons the night before the biggest interview of his life. What would Jesus do when the pain is real and the pill is right there? Subscribe, share, and remember, your soul is worth more than any salary.